Your life is not boring. Your screen time might just be too high this week. It sucks to feel like you're constantly behind while the rest of the world is seemingly living their best lives. This comes from constantly spiking and crashing our dopamine levels, spiraling into this cycle that keeps us feeling unmotivated and just down. I used to pick up my phone and start scrolling without even knowing why. And then before you know it, your screen time is just ridiculously high that day. Until I started reading some books on the topic, like The Dose Effect by TJ Power. And there are some tiny habits I have incorporated into my life to fix my attention span and to feel happier. Increase your dose. And no, I'm not about to prescribe you medicine. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a mom of two in her 30s. And I definitely used to struggle with being on my phone a lot and sometimes equating being on my phone with resting. Where in reality, if I'm just sitting on the sofa scrolling my phone, that's not really resting. And sometimes our brain can actually go into overdrive. And being aware of the dose, the 4 main brain chemicals that make a big difference in how we feel, has just changed everything for me. So there's dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. Dopamine is the brain chemical that makes us feel motivated, and this comes from doing things that require effort. Oxytocin is the connection brain chemical, and this comes from spending time with people we love and just being in a group of people that make us feel good. Serotonin is the chemical of mood and energy, and this comes a lot from things like the food we eat, spending time in nature and getting sunlight, and all of those good things that we all know are good for you, but sometimes being able to articulate exactly why and kind of what happens in our brains. For me, it was really helpful, and it just kind of made me realize a bit more how all of these things I do in my daily life, improve my mood or make me feel crappy. And then there's endorphins, which is the de-stressing chemical. And this comes from things like exercise, exercising your body. That's what gets those endorphins going. The hunter-gatherer mindset is something I became aware of by reading TJ Power's book. How even though times have changed, we live in modern times, our brains haven't really changed that much because modern times are actually quite recent and our brains haven't really caught up to that. Still got that hunter-gatherer mindset from a long ago. And back then, we would spend 85% of our time outside, whereas nowadays we are spending about 7% of our time outside. And because they did that, because they had to obviously hunt and do all of these effortful things throughout the day, they would be in the sunlight, they would get fresh air, they would get exercise, those brain chemicals would naturally increase. But nowadays, most of us aren't producing enough of those chemicals, which is why we often feel low mood, we feel unmotivated, and even though sometimes we have these big goals of things we want to achieve, it can be so hard to take the action to actually do those things. So it's not you, it's just how this world that has been built around us makes us feel, but we can change that by not ditching phones completely, but just being more intentional with the time and how we use them. There's something called slow dopamine and quick dopamine, and learning the difference between this was really helpful for me. So there's slow dopamine that is released obviously in a slower pace, and this comes from things like reading, filming or editing a video, or even cleaning your house, things that are effortful, that require a lot of effort from you, whether it's physical effort or brain effort. But this is the good kind of dopamine that's like slow building, and it gives you that good feel in time. Whereas when we go for the quick dopamine, which can come from things like shopping, online shopping, scrolling TikTok on our phones, that kind of dopamine gives us a very quick spike, but then the second we put the phone down, we have this sudden crash that just makes us feel horrible. And that's where the thing brain rot comes from, and bed rotting, and just all of these things that don't actually serve us and just make us feel low mood. Set boundaries with your phone. This is something I've started being more intentional about because I definitely had no boundaries back in the day. And I think like all of us, I do find phones extremely addicting, especially as a content creator whose whole job is being online. And I notice sometimes I will go on Instagram, for example, thinking I'm doing some research or I'm just coming up with video ideas, but actually I end up mindlessly scrolling, which is not great. So it can be hard to find a good balance, but even being aware of these things can make a huge difference, and it can sometimes help stop us in our tracks of realizing, okay, why am I sitting down with my phone? Do I actually have a purpose for this? Am I going to do the food shop or, something that I actually need to do? Or am I just mindlessly scrolling? And a few of my boundaries that I've set with my phone is, for one, I'm not leaving it on my nightstand anymore. So it doesn't go on my bedside table. It goes to charge in the other corner of the room on the desk. That's one way that ensures that I'm not going to be scrolling at bedtime before I go to sleep, which I know is not ideal for our brains to go to sleep in that high dopamine state. And also it ensures I'm not scrolling first thing when I wake up. Another boundary I've set is not taking my phone with me everywhere I go, or using it in a different way other than doom scrolling. Like when you're a toddler mom and you just need a moment to yourself.
Breathing in through the nose.
Mom.
And out through the mouth.
Thanks to Headspace for sponsoring this video. Headspace is such a simple to use app that's like a little pocket guide for my mental health. I've read so many studies about just how important sleep is. But as a mom with small children, sleep can be so hard and unpredictable. And I know I will feel it in the morning. There are a lot of things that I cannot control when it comes to sleep.
Mom, mommy, mama, mom.
But I've learned that what I can control is those little daily habits that actually improve my sleep. So instead of scrolling at night, I might just pick a quick sleep meditation instead. This is one small habit I've incorporated lately by using Headspace. It's been shown that even using Headspace for just 7 days can improve your sleep quality. And using it even 5 minutes a day can reduce your stress. I have 2 small children and I have this business I'm trying to run here, and I don't have a lot of free time in my day. And this is what I like about Headspace. I can go on the app and pick even just a 1-minute meditation of a few quick deep breaths. And even just that, I notice it makes me feel better. If you want to build better sleep and a stronger mental health into your routine as well, you can try Headspace entirely free for 60 days by using my link in the description box or scanning the QR code on the screen. They usually only give a 2-week trial, but for us, they've offered 2 full months of free access, which I think is pretty cool. Thank you, Headspace, for supporting my channel. Take care of your home. This is something that increases your dopamine and increases your happiness. And this is something I have experienced firsthand as a mom who used to really struggle with her house being cluttered and having a lot of things around. When I really started decluttering, making a lot of space, making it more functional, and not just for the aesthetics, but making it easy to maintain and to manage on a daily basis, that's when everything changed for me, and I feel like I have gotten a lot more calm. But there's been so many studies that prove that taking care of your home, having a space that's visually clutter-free, that's functional, that works for you, that can do so much for our brain chemicals, for how we feel. So if there's one thing you take from this video, maybe after you finish watching, you can just go and do a quick 5 or 10 minute declutter or tidy around your house and just make it a little bit better. And that will actually improve your mood for the day. The weekend effect is also something I learned from the book. After the weekend, we often feel low mood, and it's, you know, that Monday scaries kind of thing, but it might not necessarily be related to your job. Like, you might not hate your job, but you still might get those Monday scaries, and that's because we often engage in low dopamine activities during the weekend. So for example, eating a lot of sugar, having alcohol, scrolling our phones more, all of those activities that don't really bring a lot of value to our lives and actually just crash our moods and make us feel really low. So this has really made me be more intentional with our weekends and making sure that we actually go out and spend time outside in nature, getting some fresh air. If we are using screens, like for example our TV, I would rather us watch a movie together as a family, and just doing things like that support, you know, building that oxytocin, spending time together as a family, rather than getting a quick dopamine hit that just doesn't make us feel good at the end of the weekend. I also don't drink alcohol, but that's a story for another day. Light up your brain. Apparently there's this part of our brain called the amCC, the anterior mid-cingulate cortex. I had to read that out. Feels like Meredith Grey. And the thing about that part of our brain is that we can strengthen it. So when we do something effortful, something that increases our dopamine, like working out, reading a book, doing all of these things that actually require effort, it activates that part of our brain. And the more that we light it up, it's kind of like a muscle. You're activating that more and more, which makes it easier to activate it in the future. The more we can strengthen that part of our brain, the more motivated we will feel, and it will make that negotiation in our brain easier to win. You when you wake up in the morning and you don't feel like working out, but you know you should, and you're kind of like negotiating with yourself in your brain. Yeah, I used to do that a lot. But actually just doing the thing will make it in time easier, and you won't need to do all of that kind of negotiation happening in your brain every single morning to motivate yourself to do that. And when we see someone who's really motivated in life and they get all of this stuff done in a day, I used to really admire those people and think, how in the world are they doing all of that? And how are they motivated to keep doing that every day? But what I took from that was inspiration to add that to my own life. And the reality is that people who are very highly motivated and do a lot of these things, they have simply activated that part of their brain a lot more and a lot more consistently. And so it just becomes easier for them. Get in the flow and activate those dopamine bubbles. When we get in the flow, this is a term invented by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. When we get in that flow state, it makes it so much easier to continue doing an activity. And also it increases those dopamine bubbles. So for example, when we start working out, we might feel a bit sluggish, we might not be really into it, but the more we do it, once we're like 10-15 minutes in, we actually start getting really into it, and it's easier to keep going. We start creating those dopamine bubbles. It makes us feel good. And it's the same with things like reading a book. It might be very hard to concentrate, to focus on the pages in the beginning, but once we're a little bit into the book, we might get into the storyline, and it might be just a lot easier to continue. Same with cleaning or tidying our house. I don't always feel like doing it, but I always notice once I start cleaning the house, I actually start getting really into it, and I clean a lot more than I initially intended to. And there are so many activities we can do to get in that flow state and to increase those dopamine bubbles, like running, playing an instrument, or drawing, journaling. Gardening is something we've started doing. We actually got an allotment last year, which was so satisfying to do. Cleaning, reading, doing a puzzle, and even editing a video like the one I'm gonna edit soon after I finish filming this. Reduce what causes low dopamine. And there's a whole list in the book of things that cause low dopamine. And I'm not saying I have cut them out completely. I don't think that's realistic for a lot of us, but even being more intentional and doing it less than we used to can make such a big difference. And the main things that cause low dopamine are things like online shopping. Yes, I used to do that a lot. Sugary foods, which I definitely used to eat a lot more. Social media scrolling, and all things like that. Watch YouTube. And I know this might sound silly, but when comparing TikTok and YouTube, in the book The Dose Effect, TJ Power mentions how there's a big difference between scrolling on TikTok and watching a YouTube video. Because scrolling on TikTok will activate that quick dopamine and then crash. It's a lot of short form content, it's very speedy, it's very hard sometimes for our brains to absorb. Whereas watching a YouTube video, it's a lot longer, right? It's usually 10, 15, 20 minutes. It's a lot more of a slow dopamine release, and it is a lot better for our brains. And so that's something when I'm trying to learn something or watch my favorite creator, I actually much prefer going on YouTube versus going and scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. And I think that's also why my favorite thing to do as a creator is making YouTube videos. Let me know what rules you have around your phone, how you're maybe fixing your dopamine. I would really love to hear from you. And if you feel like you need a reset, give the 1% Better meditation from Headspace a try. And let me know how you get on with it. Just a gentle reminder that it's completely free to try Headspace for 2 months by using the link below or scanning the QR code. Thanks again, Headspace. I hope you're having a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next one.